Progressivism is a societal cancer. Oh, hi there. Welcome to the Freedom Alternative. There's a new article over at the Marxian, The Guardian, titled "Why Do Marketeers Get to Decide What Toys Are Right for Our Children?", in which a young communist social justice wanker and mother whines that her daughter asked her a blunt question and she couldn't answer in a decent manner. So, in the social justice whiner tradition, she wrote a column on the Marxian. Seriously, please do read that piece. It's quite short, but it provides an insight into the mentality of this generation of people who are now having children. God help those poor souls. The mentality of individuals such as Nicole Kendall, the author of the article I'm just recommending, is far more dangerous than what was considered in the past as parents with a dangerous mentality. In this present day, nowadays, it's not even considered a problem, let alone radical, to suggest that the entire planet changed because you, as a parent, don't have any semblance of basic common sense. And what's worse, there is a growing number of parents who demand that control over their children's lives and choices be just simply taken away from them and handed to an all-powerful and all-seeing bureaucracy because they themselves are just simply too scared of telling kids the wrong things. And by wrong things, I mean basic facts of life, who, just tend to have a conservative bias, such as, the fact that most boys prefer rough and tumble play, whilst most girls don't, or that there is such thing as masculine interests and feminine interests, and that whilst there is nothing inherently wrong to be a tomboy or a girlier boy, at the end of the day, some kids are girls and some kids are boys, and they have to grow up into grown men and women. Such realities are, though, anathema for social justice warrior parents who struggle with them, although most of them do acknowledge once they become parents that most of that gender bullshit that they advocated for in the past simply doesn't apply in the real world. But instead of coming to grips with reality, acknowledge their past mistakes and move on, they do tend to lash out at everyone else and double down on the insane rhetoric. This mother, for instance, was asked by her daughter, "Why is it that all the boys get the blue stuff? I like blue stuff. And look, dinosaurs. Why don't the pink things have dinosaurs? Why do the boys only get dinosaurs?" And this mother was, quote, "closer to choking on my own air from being checked by a child." Seriously? You were close to choking from being checked by this question? What are you going to do when your 8-year-old will be 12 and hit puberty? How are you going to social justice out of that moment? Here's a radical answer for the parents who struggle with such questions. Just tell them, "Honey, most boys tend to be attracted by those things, but if you want one for yourself, just go get it. No harm done." There. End of story. But then again, how would you get material for a Marxian column if you show some common sense? Instead of using common sense or blame her own lack of it, this mother prefers to just lash out on everyone else in the very social justice warrior tradition. Apparently, that store is the only toy store in the world, and as such, the marketeers in that store get to decide what toys are right for all children. Online ordering, driving to other stores, none of these happen and none of these exist. It's just those bloody marketeers' fault, and there ought to be a law to correct them. She also says, "I don't think raising girls is harder than raising boys, it's just different." Just wait a little bit more and come back to me on that. "We message to our children at very young ages the values we want them to hold as they grow." Okay, so what's wrong with that? Seeing a boys' aisle full of action figurines, cars and engineering kits juxtaposed against a girls' aisles full of dolls, kitchen sets, food and baby strollers sends a clear message. This is for me and that is for you. Unfortunately, we exist in a world where people rarely unlearn these. Really? For starters, let's assume that's true. If that were true, it still wouldn't be a problem. Here's another fact of life. What progressives call gender roles is what the rest of the planet calls nature. The so-called gender roles didn't evolve out of a patriarchal conspiracy to oppress women and girls, but as a direct consequence of nature. These roles exist because of the nature and not in spite of it. Because, believe it or not, children just aren't blank-slated, no matter how much social constructionists would like it so. The reality, though, is much more different than what is painted here. Believe it or not, most children aren't idiots, or as this mother would say, differently abled. Jesus Christ, I really need to make a video about retarded euphemisms. Most children, though, are actually smarter than that. Far smarter than that. And here's another secret. Most children won't remember most of the things that happened before puberty, unless they make notes, as I did in my time, or they take pictures or make videos or whatever. You know, I was having a conversation with a fembot a year ago, and she was telling me that we should change the first grade manuals in this country, where children learn how to read officially, because they depict fathers as doing the hard labor and mothers as being homemakers. And this allegedly sends an oppressive message to children. And I was like, do you even remember the trading tests in your first grade textbooks? I sure don't. And I tried really hard to remember at least one of them. I just couldn't. And then I asked around, because first I thought it's probably my problem that I tend to forget useless shit as time goes on, and I could not find any person older than 20 that could remember the texts he or she has had in the first grade. In fact, I could not find any person older than 20 that could even remember thinking about boys and girls before puberty. When I was 8 or 9, I was thinking at girls as physically weaker boys. Really, because even the strongest of them couldn't cut out properly in a football match. But anyway, I'll expand on that in the next video when I'll talk about my un-PC and modern-day illegal childhood. This is gonna be so good, I'm gonna piss off a lot of people with that video. But anyway, to sum up, these social justice warriors who become parents are running at a risk of raising very weak adults who lack the proper grit to function in society. Am I being too harsh? Perhaps, but if one has very weak parents who spoil the hell out of a child unless the kid gets lucky in his teens to get a more on-the-ground circle of friends to educate him or her out of the bullshit, I'm just simply not too hopeful of the next generation. I guess the only consolation is that SJWs don't really reproduce that much. So what do you guys think? Am I being too grumpy here or a bit too extreme? I don't know. Talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching.